This is Martin Karkstein. I'm a communication studies professor at Colorado State University and the founder and director of the CSU Center for Public Deliberation. On February 23rd, 2026, I was a guest on for Braver Angels citizen-led solutions kind of weekly call to talk about the work I do and how that might connect to the CLS kind of program as a training. We thought we recorded the event, but we had some technical difficulties. So I'm just going to record me walking through the slides I did for the first half of the event, so probably about 30 minutes or so. Then we had lots of Q&A after that. That way, people that weren't able to be on the call or were on the call and want to kind of go back and dig into the information, they'd be able to kind of do that, right? So I'm going to share my slide deck here. And you will have, I'll post a link as well. You have this resource page on the right side, which will have all my slides and then also links to a lot of the resources. This is kind of just a pretty high level overview of the work that I do, but very connected with some of the goals of the citizen-led solutions. So I'm excited to be working with Braver Angels and, want to be an ongoing resource as you do this work, right? So my research has always focused on how do we talk about tough issues? How do we come together across perspectives to address our shared problems? I actually started this CPD. It's going to be 20 years ago now in August. I train students as facilitators in my courses, and then we run events in the community. We've actually run over 600 events primarily in Fort Collins, northern Colorado, on a very wide variety of issues. So at this point, we're actually fee for service. We get hired by the city, by the county, by the school district, by community organizations to help design events to bring people together to have the tough discussions they need to have for democracy to work. And that's always been my research. My initial academic training was in argumentation, which is this sub-discipline that focuses on, how do we evaluate arguments? How do we evaluate the reasons people give for the positions they have? And how do we make these tough distinctions between a strong argument and a weak argument, which are so critical for democracy to work? For democracy to work, we need to be able to come together and have these conversations. And when we're making decisions together about what to do, we need good information and we need processes that elevate good information and hopefully kind of undermine bad information. Unfortunately, we're not getting that, right? In our political environment, we tend to be very polarized. We kind of overrun with misinformation and disinformation. So a lot of my work, again, the last 20 years has been, how do we design processes that avoid triggering the worst of human nature and then tap into the best of human nature and help us tap into the creativity and the connection that we need to have in our local communities. Right? So this essay you'll have access to is kind of a summary of my work. It taps in to kind of the framework of what the problems that I use quite a bit that I'll just touch on briefly today. It summarizes a lot of the social psychology and brain science, which is a big part of my work of how do we design better processes and avoid a lot of the negative and problematic processes we're getting, and then provides an introduction to deliberative practice, to deliberative engagement of these, ways of talking that are about how do we work together, how do we make decisions together, and particularly again at the local community, which is the focus of my work. So to kind of begin with, I now have been lately kind of framing my work as a response to these three kind of particular intertwined challenges that we're facing, particularly at the national level, but more and more these days at all levels. And the first is toxic polarization. I have two quick points about toxic polarization. One is I personally believe it is our number one issue. When we're polarized at the extent that we are right now, we can't function as a democratic community. Facts don't work. It brings out the worst in us in so many different ways. The good news, though, is a lot of this polarization isn't real. It's manufactured. It's fake. We make really bad assumptions about people on the other side, and we have research from lots of different organizations that I'll mention on the resource page that kind of show this. But obviously, people with Brave Angels have seen this firsthand as well. Like when you have a better conversation, you realize that you agree on quite a bit, right? You still might disagree on certain things, but the polarization isn't nearly as bad. The problem is the perception of polarization is more important than the reality. And if we think we're this divided, and the majorities often do, we get all the negative aspects. Second is what I'm terming now information chaos from a book of that title. And it's just our ability to create and share information has just exponentially exploded the last few decades. Our ability to make sense of information, to make distinctions between good information and bad information has not only not kept up, has actually backtracked quite a bit as we've lost trust in our institutions. We've lost trust in journalism. We've lost trust in government. We've lost trust in expertise in universities. So we're overrun now with misinformation and just, people are getting their own facts from different sides. We have partisan media that kind of feeds that. It just makes it really difficult for us to have the conversations we need to have. And then third, I'm using the term conflict profiteers. And there's basically people, and this is at the national political level in particular, but also in our media processes and our tech platforms that are conflict profiteers that actually benefit from this environment, that benefit from the simple narratives that divide us and kind of cause this polarization and cause the information chaos. Now, the reality is these three are very intertwined and they feed into each other. We have a lot of interesting efforts trying to address all three. But if we have processes that address one without dealing with the other two, they're likely to fall short. Right? So that's the work that I do is how do we try to take on all three of these at the same time? And part of, I've been involved with Braver Angels for many years. I've been part of their Scholars Council. I've certainly with my focus on toxic polarization, very much a supporter of the work Braver Angels are doing. This shift of Braver Angels, or maybe I shouldn't say shift, but the addition of this citizen-led solutions and really trying to equip these local alliances to pick an issue and work on something together to do some action, very much kind of puts Braver Angels in my lane in a good way, doing the work that we've been doing for the last 20 years. And part of what that does is I think Braver Angels primarily has focused on toxic polarization for most of its history. Now it's kind of engaging broader. And as we move from a dialogue or debates that are primarily designed to help understand each other and depolarize to actually working together on issues, we're needing to kind of take on information. We need good information to make good decisions going through. So it's kind of expanding the work that we're doing. And I've got the toolkit to hopefully help those y'all doing that. Right? Mentioned this a little bit already, but this is kind of the work that I do. A lot of my work is infused with social psychology and brain science, very much like the beginning of Braver Angels in some important ways. Right? But we need to build capacity, particularly in our local communities, for me, for engagement, of ways of connecting, of talking, of making decisions together that avoid activating the worst of human nature and actually tap in the best. And the good news here, very much to focus on, is we know how to do this. We know from multiple academic fields, from multiple fields of practice, we know how to bring people together across perspectives to have the tough conversations they need to have for democracy to work better. So we just need to build capacity in our communities and get more and more people that are relying on these different ways of engaging rather than what we're getting inherently from the national kind of a two-party system that often brings out the worst in us, right? So another quick paper that if you're interested, this one I literally just published about a month ago with my graduate student here at CSU that looks at basically the number one insight from my work for 20 years is communities need bridging institutions. They need organizations that are focused and equipped to bring people together and help them have these conversations. Our brains aren't wired for these conversations, but with help, with good process, we can do this. So you'll see in this article, why I'm so excited about Braver Angels, kind of with this new focus on citizen-led solutions, on how it's really kind of playing both kind of this bridging institution role, but also in some ways by picking a topic and really focusing on it in ways that bring people together, it's creating what I call a bridging advocacy group, which is exactly the kind of organizations our community needs. Right? As I've said, I'm not going to dig into it here. I'll give you some links to videos if you're interested. But when I keep on mentioning kind of how do we avoid trigger the worst of human nature and tap in the best of human nature, this is what I'm talking about. I'm not going to walk through these bullet points. You can pause here if you want to read a little closer. I do cover this in my robust deliberative city essay that I kind of linked kind of earlier on. But the reality is our current political processes, our current ways of engaging far too often trigger those on the left and rely on those, and conflict profiteers are trying to kind of bring those out. Whereas if we design a process that avoids those and actually taps into those things on the right, humans are capable of having the kind of conversations and engagement we need to have for democracy to thrive. So how do we do that more? So one key aspect to help understand kind of the addition of a citizen-led solution from my perspective is this work I've been doing for quite a while, making important theoretical distinctions between debate, deliberation, and dialogue. These are all three of these are useful interactive communication kind of methods or technologies of ways of talking to each other. We need all three of these primarily because our brains aren't wired inherently for the kind of conversations we need to have. Right? So these are three ways, design processes to help kind of accomplish some important things. And part of it, if you look at this, dialogue, which I see primarily what Braver Angels has been doing is dialogue. Right? The processes are designed to help people understand each other, to develop mutual understanding, to develop respect, to listening to each other in particular ways. So dialogue is critical to deal with the toxic polarization. Uh, most debate, unfortunately, is really low quality. Most debate kind of feeds the conflict, feeds the polarization. People just kind of pick a side, and they're primarily kind of preaching to their own choir, making assumptions about the other side to kind of feed that. But there is good debate, right? And we don't want to just throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I've been researching that a little bit more lately of what are the best models of debate, and how do we kind of tap into those? And for me, the primary purpose of debate is insight, right? The purpose of debate is to evaluate the quality of the arguments, through this kind of competitive, framed thing that ideally elevates good arguments and exposes bad arguments. So debate, when done well, is great for information chaos. You see deliberation. I run the Center for Public Deliberation, so yes, I'm biased. I have that in the middle because at its best, I think deliberation brings out the best of debate and dialogue. It brings the connection and the depolarization and the development, undoing kind of false assumptions and building mutual understanding that we get from dialogue. But then it also brings in the rigor or the quality or the information matters from debate and kind of brings those together. Now, while deliberation, I do believe, is the most important, it's also by far the most resource heavy. To do deliberation well takes a lot of resources, takes a lot of time. So this is why it's so important for our communities to build capacity to do that. Now, and the work that I do with local communities, this is how do you tap into the local university or community college? What's the role of public library? What's the role of local government? What's the role of community foundations? What's the role of Braver Angels chapters or Rotary clubs and so forth? Like, how do we build capacity in our community that help us be able to deliberate to support high quality deliberation on the issues that we care about. And that's where I'm hoping to kind of tap into these citizen led solutions as another way for communities to build this capacity. So while all three of these are important, the more we have, the better versions of these, the better. So still, Braver Angels still doing dialogue programs and red and blue workshops and so forth are great. The Braver Angels debates in some way, are also kind of ways of understanding issues in a better way. The next step, I think, as we build capacity in our communities, is for Braver Angels to support these more robust deliberative processes. And I'll show you with the rest of this video kind of how we do some of these things, right? So deliberative engagement is the term that I use. We're engaging. The overall idea of deliberation is it's this question: what should we do about X? With the we being the community, the we is broadly so that includes government, but it also includes nonprofits and includes faith institutions. It includes private businesses, individuals. It's the community coming together to address a shared problem. And yes, government is a particularly important tool of communities, but it's one tool among many. And that's one way deliberation, I think, brings together reds and blues, because we're not starting with the assumption that government is the problem solver, that the community has to take the lead in a sense we're going through. These are just some of the words. There's lots of different disciplines, both academic and practitioner world, that do deliberative engagement, but the overall kind of underlining kind of theme here is that there's a process designed to it, that there's someone who's trained to help people come together across perspectives, to help support this kind of collaboration. It goes back to the social psychology and brain science that we're not quite wired to have these tough conversations. So we have to use process design to help avoid trigger the worst and actually tap into the best. So this is kind of some of the big nuts and bolts, in a sense, the key components of deliberative engagement. that I'll just kind of provide this. There'll be further trainings that they're interested on how to really kind of dig in to some of these kind of specifics. But overall, how are we framing it? This goes back to the question: what should we do about X? A lot of my processes, instead of a debate, is often a yes no question about a specific solution. Should we do this kind of thing? Whereas deliberation backs it up a little bit and it asks again, what should we do about X? It starts with a problem and engages people on a problem that hopefully is framed as a problem that most people agree it's a problem, that we should do something. Certainly disagree on what we should do and how we should do it. But it starts with this common ground of what should we do about this issue. And instead of having a yes, no to a one particular thing, which from my research on social psychology tends to derail things, if you're asking a yes, no question, most people show up and they've already answered the question. They're on the yes side or their no side, just kind of the red side or the blue side. And that means their brains are probably off. They're there to defend their perspective rather than there to learn or to listen or to be creative or to solve problems together. Right. So we want to kind of start the process upstream, frame it as a problem, and then be open-minded on what solutions might be. And this is critical for tapping into the most important aspect of human nature that we need for democracy to work, which is human creativity. Right. So let's start with a problem and help engage the community on figuring out ways that we might address that problem. A key aspect of deliberation, which is an addition here to what Braver Angels Alliances might be doing, is using a discussion guide or backgrounder. This is what brings in the good information and the framing and so forth, right? Most Braver Angels events are really kind of relying on the participants to bring kind of the information, the perspective, and to talk to each other. For deliberation, we do a lot of work before the meeting to try to summarize all the perspectives and to do some fact checking, to get some good information and provide something at the table that people are reacting to. We often call this a placemat because it's often waiting for people at the table. Sometimes it's a 111 by 17 piece of paper. Sometimes it's a short kind of 4-page booklet. Sometimes it's a little bit longer. But the art of creating this discussion guides is going to be an important aspect of this work. How do you develop something that the purpose of the document isn't to persuade someone or even inform someone, but it's to spark a good conversation? So you're engaging the broader community, you're engaging lots of different perspectives, and you're trying to capture those in a document. So in the actual deliberation meeting, the heart of the meeting is people reacting to that document. And we never get the document perfect. We never get it right because the part of the process of the meeting is to help us improve that document. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Tell us what's missing. But that very aspect of working on this document that provides good information and multiple perspectives basically gives the group a group project. Instead of coming in fighting for your perspective, you're working together with your fellow residents, with your fellow citizens, trying to kind of find a better way of addressing this issue. So I have lots of other resources, a whole nother video that has lots of examples of these types of discussion guides. Part of what will be happening is we'll create, there's already lots of different discussion guides on issues that you'll be able to use someone else's discussion guide to start learning how to do this. Eventually, you might build the skill set to create your own discussion guides. We want to create a community of practice that different alliances that realize they're working on the same issue can work together with people with more experience to help create these discussion guides and then maybe tweak them for your community. But this is, and there's lots of different types of discussion guides that a separate video will kind of cover. But that's kind of a basic aspect of deliberation. Then deliberation is, you see the picture on the bottom from one of our events, it's smaller groups, because we want people reacting to each other and talking to each other. We don't want the dominant voices to be the ones that are always kind of at the microphone in a sense. So how do we kind of create these smaller groups that are kind of working as these think tanks in a sense, reacting to this document and coming up with better ways of thinking about how a community might move the needle on issues that they care about. And then these processes, so you'll learn kind of a broader toolkit of ways of engaging. Most of these kind of tie to these different kind of discussion guides, but a process designed not just to gather input, not just to gather kind of understanding across perspective, but processes for interaction to support collaborative problem solving. So we'll be sharing this tool book. I'll give you a couple of different resources to look at that. And then the last, deliberative facilitators, my program I've got a group of about 30 students that are going through coursework that are getting trained. So again, the picture on the bottom, I typically have two students at every table. One's facilitating, one's note taking. But we'll be talking about facilitation training, kind of another tool of like how do you help people have these kind of conversations, kind of going through, build that capacity in your community. So this is a slide from a different presentation you'll have access to that really does a deeper dive on the value of the deliberative discussion guide. I've been using these for 20 years. I know that they work, but it wasn't until about 10 years ago or so when I did the deep dive into social psychology and brain science to really understand how we're wired and all that stuff that I realized why they worked. Right, why they help us so much improve a conversation and have a much deeper kind of nuanced conversation that's very hard to kind of just have naturally, right? So again, I'm not going to walk through these bullet points. You can pause if you want to read them, but I have a separate video that really kind of talks through this and then shows several different examples of types of discussion guides that are going here are at least four in that video that I talk through. National Issues Forum in particular is a national organization that's been creating discussion guides for probably 40, 50 years now. I've worked with them quite a bit. They have some new leadership that I'm really excited about that is wanting to design more of these discussion guides for a local community. I think there'll be a great partnership between Braver Angels and National Issues Forums to provide y'all these discussion guides that you can kind of use in your community and to lower the bar, to make it easier for y'all to spark these conversations, at least initially, until you develop kind of the skill set to do your own discussion guides. This is another paper that I wrote quite a while back, but it really kind of fits with the citizen-led solutions, kind of what you're thinking of doing. So I wanted to touch on that at least a little bit on this talk. So in this paper, I kind of lay out these three order goals of the work. This is for the work that I'm doing in the center. I help start lots of centers like mine at other universities. And in some ways, what Braver Angels has been doing, the alliances are primarily doing, is these first order goals. That you're bringing people together, you're helping improve democratic attitudes and skills, you're depolarizing, you're helping people understand, you're improving those relationships. So these are important kind of things that we need, and especially as you do Braver Angels debates, or as you're moving now into potentially kind of deliberations, people are learning about an issue with much more nuance. They're not seeing things through filters of just one side. They realize this connects to my broader work about seeing issues through a wicked problems lens, that these problems are difficult because they inherently involve multiple underlying values that don't fit together very well, and then different people prioritize those values differently, right? So all these first order goals, this is important work communities need. That's not quite moving to action, right? It's more about building capacity. It's more about showing people an alternative way of engaging. The good news of the work that I've done for 20 years and the work that a lot of my colleagues that do this work is when you show someone an alternative, a different way of talking, they see the value of it and they want more of it. Right? So part of this first order goals, this is the lower bar. This is bringing people together, once a month to have an interesting conversation about an issue that's framed in a different way, has value. It's important stuff that we need to do. The second order goals takes it to the next step, and this is where you're actually kind of engaging and you're wanting to move the needle on an issue. You want to pick an issue and bring people together to make some plans and do something. And now, some of these might be pretty small projects, right? That you're wanting to kind of create a new holiday, right? A chance for people in your community to kind of come together across perspectives, or as you develop more capacity, maybe these are bigger issues that you're taking on issues. We've done lots of work on mental health and on climate change and on homelessness and on transportation. How do we rethink transportation as our communities kind of get older? On social actualization, tons of issues out there. So that second order goals are the primary focus is I do want to move the needle. Whether that is tied to institutional decision making, so you're working directly with a city council or a school district or a county, or it's more individual action that you're working with organizations and coalitions and nonprofits. But overall, the second order is you're moving the needle, right? And obviously, citizen-led solutions is wanting to start working that way. that we're wanting to pick projects and projects big enough to matter, but small enough to be manageable in a sense to move the needle. And then the third order goal is this is the overarching goal of the work that I've been doing, tied to imagining the robust deliberative city. The first article of how do we build capacity in our communities for a different way of engaging each other. And you see here on the arrows on the bottom, having organizations that are focused on the first order goals has impact on the overall capacity. So as if this seems like a lot for an alliance to do, doing continue to do first order goals, but learning and experimenting a little bit more with these deliberative kind of processes, moving to kind of collaborative problem solving, at least is the frame of what you're doing. You're asking what should we do, even though you might not have the capacity to actually do it yet or move the needle on things, is okay. But eventually you'll build the capacity, you'll make partnerships with other organizations and build kind of a coalition of these civic hub groups that will help you with the second order goals. And all of that leads to this broader civic capacity that as you build civic capacity, each time you take on a new topic, it's easier because people have developed the skills, they've got the connections, and they know how to do this. And this is the exciting part about this work. Just like polarization is like a negative feedback loop, and polarization leads to more polarization, we know from the research that quality engagement leads to more quality engagement. Each time you have a tough conversation, the next conversation is a little bit easier because you're literally retraining your brain, rewiring your brain to have these different conversations. And that's what we're hoping to kind of help Braver Angels Alliances kind of start on this journey, right? Going back to the processes that kind of help kind of interaction versus just kind of capturing opinions. So the National Coalition of Dialogue and Deliberations, another great resource you'll get introduced to if you're not familiar with them already. I was their board chair for several years. But this document, is just a toolkit of all these different ways of engaging. They use this engagement streams framework of 4, exploring new issues, transforming a conflict, making decisions together, or sparking collaborative action. And then for each of these, they have a whole toolkit with lots of different links of just different ways of engaging type of thing. So this is the toolkit that y'all will start being able to build of just different ways of engaging people and see people get excited about talking a different way and see people push back on this simplistic us versus them kind of two-party framing that we way too often get. I'm going to do a whole different video with this. I've got one, but I think I might just record a different one specifically for Braver Angels because I want to cut this down now. We're getting close to 30 minutes now, which is basically what I did. The first half of the college presentation, the second half was kind of Q&A. But I at least want to pull this up and just give a brief overview of this, and I'll let y'all know when I do the additional video. I do already have an older video on the resource page if you want to look at this, but I want to redo that specifically for Braver Angels. But this is one of the basic models that we use a lot in our training for students, but also to kind of think about what kind of conversations we want to spark in our communities. And a lot of this is this notion of these 3 stages of divergent thinking, of working through the groan zone, and then convergent thinking. So divergent thinking is getting beyond the usual suspects, getting beyond the assumptions, and hearing from people in your community that you don't normally hear from. How do we make sure all voices are heard? And the second stage is, okay, now you have lots of voices. That's messy. That's complex. Our brains don't like all this uncertainty. So there's a whole different set of processes of working through the groan zone, of helping develop understanding across perspectives, of engaging those tensions in some important ways that humans aren't very wired to do. I do think Braver Angels has done a good job with these first 2. The third is kind of the addition that deliberation brings in. Right, that we need the first 2 steps, right? You can't jump to deliberation without making sure you got lots of voices heard and lots of different perspectives and doing the hard work of depolarization and mutual understanding from the groan zone. But if we're making decisions together, at some point we need the convergent thinking. This is getting beyond the agree to disagree, right? This is, no, we are going to kind of agree together what we should do. So convergent thinking is making some tough choices and making some decisions about, what arguments are better or worse or who's doing what and where. So as I look at a community, communities need capacity in all 3 of these. And all 3 of these stages is a different style of communication, a different kind of process, a different kind of toolkit. So part of for the citizen-led solutions is continuing to kind of refine the tools for the first two stages, but then also kind of developing the tools for the third stage. So some of the other slides I'll do in a longer video, but with that, that is kind of the overview that I gave in that first call. Then we had 30 minutes of Q&A. We also had a lot of questions on the chat that I did add to the resource page and then gave my answers to. But I hope this is kind of an initial call. I'm excited to be working with Braver Angels and kind of helping equip and excited to kind of see individual alliances that want to take the ball and run with this and see as we constantly kind of experiment together, figuring out better ways of engaging our community and trying to move the needle on issues that we care about. So thank you very much.